generational narcissism. What might that look like? And understanding that if, as a partner, you choose an individual that is essentially not worth your time, but in maintaining said relationship, each individual in themselves begins to become a narcissist on their own, each specifically stating to one another, "You are not worth my time." But in maintaining a relationship, such as a continuation of a commitment in this argument, which has led to children growing up in said environment, you can actively find that if each partner is not pleased in their equality of said time worth spent, if this time worth spent is not creating happiness, but is as a result creating pain and suffering, ultimately you find not just a rise in narcissism within each particular partner, which narcissism is essentially taking the pain the self experiences it, and in order to control it or not experience it, you would then place it upon the external world, whether it be your partner or your child, which as a result, through both parents being narcissistic, you can actively find the child, which is just basically a dry sponge in water at that particular point, will soak in everything. From soaking in every little thing in its development, the child itself, without ever experiencing an opposing relationship, is already a narcissist. In the child being a narcissist, you find that they themselves are actively seeking to control said pain by placing it upon others. In these particular children, you might find that, just as the parents, narcissism is a level of psychopathy, which, as a result of controlling said pain or anger, if an individual does not learn to essentially create a healing, said child of both partners and both partners themselves result in then generational narcissists, which generational narcissists are, as we have come to see, the result being the world today. In the ego of self, if I don't hold said pain upon myself, others will experience it. And if others experience it, it is because I do not hold said pain upon myself. In order to create a healing, needs to be an expression of said pain, also known as communication. And communicating your emotions in a healthy manner, which in a healthy manner, you can actively see that in the human experience, we have an emotional intelligence, the frontal cortex, and the logical intelligence known as the peripheral cortex. within each of these particular brains, the more an individual is stimulated or purely react, as an example, from the initial stimulus being the emotion, and they purely act emotionally, you could find that in these particular individuals, you have children seeking to place pain upon others. In placing said pain upon others, what do you think that ultimately leads to? Not just the children themselves, but other children practicing the act of self-harm. Is this starting to ring a bell now? Generational narcissists or generational narcissism in itself results in a non-identifying experience, which, without being able to essentially learn how to process that emotion, the individual no longer identifies within the self. Because the self is unable to express, because even the child developing from the two narcissistic parents, as a result, if they place a pain upon each other, they then place it upon the child. But a child does not have the same intelligence as an adult, and time developed in narcissistic parent relationships as a growing, developing child results in said individual not knowing how to express. They are continuously pushed back and controlled, that the only way they may essentially be successful is by choosing a parent. And in this particular moment, the moment that parents split or specifically divorce as well, you can actively see both parents once again play the child against one another, which, by playing the child against one another, the child essentially is continuously choosing to identify with one particular parent. Or it is continuously, you could say, being pulled back and forth in its experience, resulting in it, as the child, not having an identifying experience. In order to reverse the effects of this, we need to find a way to essentially give the child a healthy love. In said healthy love needs to be compromise, that which from said compromise, each parent is happy, resulting in the child growing up happy. Obviously, life has its ups and downs. The rate at which you compress these ups and downs results in mental health developing, such as mental health conditions. In these mental health conditions, all that mental health is the regular pattern of the ups and downs of life, simply being compressed in a shorter time span, which then creates irregular, very quick emotional ranges, resulting in instability. And the quicker we essentially create these dopamine fixing, irregularities by compressing time spans in order to create a feel-good sensation, such as pulling a child back and forth between said parents, or even simply a TikTok addiction, a compression of time span resulting in dopamine fixes. In these particular dopamine fixes, what you essentially get to the point of is, if you are rewarded without having to perform something to achieve said reward has no meaning. And in said reward having no meaning, the reward has no value. If the reward has no value, it is not worth time spent. The moment we can recreate value within each other, not by specifically placing hate on one another, but placing an environment in order to allow individuals, such as children, growing up in narcissistic homes, you could create, from this particular analysis, a way to better the lives of children. Teachers themselves, which are adults, right? Teachers themselves, which are adults. Let me put a very particular analysis that was placed in a particular read that I happened to stumble upon. If within my day, as an example, imagine I'm driving to work and some person cuts me off. In my emotional response to said stimulus, I get angry. Now, from that, all of a sudden, you could say either up or down. You then pass that on to another individual. You arrive at work, somebody says, hey, you look a little rough morning, what's going on with you? And you simply kind of snap. I don't have time for you. So then you pass that pain to the other individual. Ultimately, said pain does not get passed, it is simply yourself just dispensing it. But by the end of the day, said pain is still present, because when you come back home now, when your partner asks you, how was your day? What do you ultimately do? You tell the story of your day, and once again, create the passing of said pain to your partner. If the partner is of a healthy stability to you, and you are just as a healthy stability to them, then this act of sharing conflict, such as a dinner conversation, which you could have as a family with your children present, we can actively create problem solving within said children by creating an example. But the moment we essentially stop learning how to communicate the resolution of problems between partners themselves, we essentially arise at narcissistic parents, resulting in generational narcissism, resulting in narcissistic individuals. Thank you.